Hello everyone, I am Melanie Jongsma of the Lansing Journal, here with Josh Bootsma, our managing editor.
Hello.
Today we're going to spend a little time answering people's question about why we're not covering Thornton Township.
That's right.
People are asking us that, maybe because you've seen some segments on larger media, WGN and Channel 32. Supervisor Henyard and Mayor Henyard have been in the news,
yes,
broadcast news recently, and maybe you've wondered why the Lansing Journal isn't providing that kind of coverage.
And that's a good question, and it's a complicated answer to that question, and that's why we're going to spend some significant time diving into that in today's video. And we have two reasons for that, but before we get to those reasons, we do want to acknowledge that larger media coverage is important, and we definitely appreciate it. There are a lot of questions that are coming out about Thornton Township, about Supervisor Henyard, about the way that money is being spent, and the questions are large enough that media of all sizes should be interested in them. And we are grateful that there are some larger media outlets that are investing the time and the capacity that, frankly, we just don't have towards answering some of those questions.
Right, they are complicated questions, and they need large teams of people to answer them. But I think we could note here, Josh, that it's true that these larger media and other media have referenced Lansing Journal coverage of these events. Because we were there early, we were there first.
Township supervisor. I didn't see that coming.
You've been voted the Thornton Township supervisor. How do you feel right now?
Oh man, I'm overjoyed. I didn't see it coming. I love it.
And some of that documentation is well, you had a conversation with Ben Bradley of WGN this week.
Just this week on Tuesday, I met Ben Bradley from WGN, and he said that he recognized the name The Lansing Journal as us being some of the first reports to come out on the township.
This is journalism today. So often it's local organizations who are sitting in these meetings that are the only ones who are holding officials accountable. We can come in and do our best, but we got a great big city and region to cover.
I also remember hearing something similar from some reporters from the Better Government Association last year when I met them at a township meeting. So people have noticed, and it's with something like this that one of the logical questions is, wait, how did this happen? What's the background on this? And we have been able to answer some of those questions of how we got to this point.
Right, and we are not stepping out of the game now that they are in it, but we have a different style of reporting and different obstacles than they have, so that's what we want to talk to you about today.
Right. So I mentioned there's two lenses to answer the question of why we haven't been reporting on the township as much recently, and the two are, we have lots of questions and there are lots of complications, so we'll just call that questions and complications, and two, inaccessibility. So we're going to explain both of those. We'll start with lots of questions and complications, and we're fresh off of two township experiences this week. I attempted to go to a meeting on Tuesday, a regular board meeting for the township, and Melanie, you attended a township talk on Wednesday.
Right, so we have some fresh examples to talk about. And regarding questions and complications, here's one example that came out of the township talk on Wednesday. Supervisor Henyard made reference to some sort of new program that she's starting that she's very proud of. It has something to do with mortgage relief for middle-income people.
We're going to pay people mortgages and rental assistance up to $1 million. $1 million, guys. You're going to give away to Thornton Township.
Not a lot of details were offered at the meeting, and maybe it's a good story, but there are so many questions about what this program is. Who's getting the money? Why are they getting it?
The mechanics of a program like that are complicated.
When does it start? I don't have any of those answers. So I don't want to just say, yeah, $1 million giving away mortgage. That's not a story. So it requires more unraveling in order to report on that, and that will take some time.
That's right.
So that's one example.
And that's true about some other programs in general. That's kind of a mentality that we felt is important that we have. There's a lot of money being given away. There's a lot of money spent. And there's just questions about if taxpayer dollars are best spent that way. and if the township's, solutions or responses to some problems are actually the best long-term solutions to some of those problems.
Right, and a lot of those were referred to at the township talk as well. Supervisor Henyard wants media to talk about a lot of the fun things that she's doing. She's got a big bingo program that happens on Thursday nights, I think, and she's giving away TVs and washers and dryers and large prizes that people are excited about. And she's proud of that.
Yeah.
And wants credit for that. So we could report on that, but I have questions about that too.
Right.
Because I believe the money that she's spending on those prizes is taxpayer money.
Right. So that's example one. Number two, in our category questions and complications, is just the topic of Township Assessor Cassandra Elston.
Right.
Assessor Elston, we've reported months ago, was locked out of her office. The keys, the locks were changed on her office door.
Still can't get in.
So she was unable to function fully and help taxpayers the way that she has been elected to do. She is her own elected official. She does not report directly to the supervisor. She's not hired by the supervisor.
Right.
So she has had just a really tough time. I saw her again on Tuesday. She's confirmed that she is still locked out of her office. Not only that, her budget has largely been taken away. She really doesn't have money to spend on basic needs. For one example, there's a designation certification. I don't really understand it, but it's something necessary for Assessor Elston legally to do her job.
Right.
She needs to be certified in a certain way. And that's an expense that should be covered by the township in the assessor's budget. It's very basic. That hasn't happened, so Assessor Elston has paid for that, hundreds of dollars out of her own pocket, so that she can continue to be above board and help the taxpayers.
You can do anything you want to pretty much say or do to me, it's okay. But when you come between me and the taxpayers and the job that they voted me in to do, I have a problem with that.
Another example she gave me is that she's prepared to go and spend money for simple things like copy paper and ink so that she can continue to print off documentation and send letters on behalf of people who really need help with the tax system is complicated.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that people need someone like Assessor Elston to help them. So just another example of, there's a lot of questions surrounding that and a lot of complicated stuff in that situation.
Right. So apparently, the supervisor is making decisions about not spending money in taxpayer education.
Right.
But she is spending money on large screen TVs.
Right.
Questions.
Questions.
Good examples. And some of these questions are being raised by these larger media that we talked about.
Yes, and we're grateful for that, as
Yes.
I mentioned. One of those is from WGN, has done some investigative reporting. One of the reports focused on the charitable organization, the Tiffany Henyard Cares Foundation, which is a charitable organization that Supervisor Henyard has established to help families, dealing with cancer diagnoses, maybe cancer prevention, I'm not sure exactly. A good thing, right?
Sure.
An organization that is on its face a good thing. However, the organization has not filed basic paperwork with the state of Illinois that shows income and expenses, essentially how the money is being used, right? And the purpose of that kind of paperwork is to ensure that a charitable organization is being charitable with its money and that it's going where it says it's going. That paperwork has been missing, and it's been missing for a long enough time that the Illinois Attorney General, according to WGN, has threatened civil penalties against the foundation if that basic paperwork is not filed. Questions, complications about the leader of Thornton Township.
Exactly. And Supervisor Henyard referred to that foundation, and she's very passionate about cancer. She has cancer in her family. She wants to help people with cancer. That was clear at the meeting on Wednesday.
Yep.
But we'd love to report on that, but we have questions now about how she's helping people.
Right, and if this is her own foundation, then the foundation itself has posted videos on Facebook that there are township employees that are going with her on a trip to Springfield and talking with other people. There are township vehicles being used for this. If this is a charitable organization, is it appropriate that tax dollars are being spent to help raise money for this charitable foundation? Lots of questions.
Questions. You had another example about her trip to Las Vegas.
Yes.
And she referred to that on Wednesday's meeting as well. She is making the claim that this trip to Las Vegas was a necessary expense, an investment in the township, because she was meeting with potential business developers, things she wants to bring to the township to improve life in Thornton Township.
Right.
So she feels it's a necessary expense to go to Las Vegas and have these meetings face-to-face rather than some other way.
Right. And WGN has asked her questions about that, and we too also have questions about that. If that is really the best way to invest in economic development, and the way that the money was spent while they were in Las Vegas.
A lot of questions.
Another example, Melanie is reporting from Fox 32. This is somewhat more of a recent thing. So Supervisor Henyard makes roughly $224,000 a year as her salary as supervisor of Thornton Township. This is something that she inherited from former Supervisor Frank Zuccarelli.
Correct.
The Township Board in December voted to pass a resolution that would decrease the salary of the supervisor position, but only if a non-incumbent fills the position after the election. What does that mean? Here's what it means. In other words, if Tiffany Henyard is reelected to the position in 2025, she will continue to make over $200,000 per year. But if anyone else beats her in the election and takes on the position, they will make $25,000 a year. That's a pay decrease of about 90%.
Right. So there's a lot of questions about that too. Now it's
complications.
It's very complicated.
There's a history.
Because yes, it's true that that Tiffany Henyard is making this level of money, and that's because she inherited the position. She's fulfilling a position that Frank Zuccarelli did not complete.
That's correct. Yeah.
So he was, and Thornton Township's salary structure is complicated.
Yeah.
The supervisor did not start out at that level of salary, but they have it structured so that the supervisor gets an increase every year. I think the trustees do too. And Frank served in that, Supervisor Zuccarelli served in that position for 30 years.
Yeah.
So his salary increased every year for 30 years. He ended up at $224,000 because Tiffany Henyard was appointed to fill his vacant seat. She gets his salary.
Right.
Normally, then, if she's reelected in 2025, she would start over again at the beginning.
Right.
So she's trying to prevent that.
Right.
Very complicated.
Yes.
And it takes a lot of brain power to understand that, and then for us to report on that, to explain the whole thing, it just gets complicated.
Right. The phrase that's been used about that is it's a political poison pill, and it's worth noting that Trustee Chris Gonzalez was the only trustee to vote against that resolution. And that brings us actually to our next point, which is there are 3 trustees that are kind of green light go for the Henyard administration, and one who's not. That's Chris Gonzalez. The other trustees are Jerry Jones, Darlene Gray Everett, and Carmen Carlisle, who was appointed to the unfulfilled term of Trustee Joyce Washington, who passed away last year.
Right.
Trustee Chris Gonzalez has shared some of his concerns with the Lansing Journal. I had a chance to talk to him on Tuesday, and we'll just let him speak for himself here a minute. Chris, you and I have talked before about when you receive these agendas that you're asked to vote on. When did you receive tonight's agenda?
Received an agenda earlier today. However, connected to the agenda generally is supposed to be the list of bills. That was not. So I would not have seen the bills say tonight until I sat down, and the meeting 2 weeks ago was canceled. So it should have been a pretty considerable list of bills, and that's obviously not adequate time to review all that and then make a good vote on it. So that's one of the problems. No, it's unfortunately recently, or I shouldn't even say recently, but it's been for a little while now that that's been kind of consistent where bills aren't handed out till I sit down. I say I just because I could only speak for myself. I don't know if anyone else sees them or not, but anyways, and then we're asked to make a vote yes or no approving those bills. You can't go through it in over a couple minutes, not well anyways. So that's one of the reasons that I've been voting no on the bills, because you don't have adequate time to really look at them and make a good decision.
Yeah, I'm glad you had a chance to talk to him, and I also want to point out that Trustee Chris Gonzalez is another elected official he's still a trustee in Thornton Township. He is no longer listed on the Thornton Township website.
Right.
I believe Supervisor Henyard does not consider him part of her team.
Right.
So she has removed him from the website.
He is still a trustee, though. We promise you that. So that's our first kind of category, questions and complications. We hope you're convinced of that it's complicated. There are lots of questions.
It's exhausting to talk about.
Questions that make it hard for us to cover in the way that we would like to, right? Our very fact-based, level-headed reporting, it just makes it very difficult. Our second category here is inaccessibility. And we have a few examples of that from this week, frankly.
Right. You said you tried to go to a standard Thornton Township board meeting. That's
correct. That's after I was planning to go to one earlier this month, but it got canceled. I don't know if I can quite quantify it, Melanie, but in the last handful of months, there have been times where I'm planning to go and the meeting gets canceled or it gets rescheduled or it gets delayed. And there are sometimes valid reasons for that, but it does certainly happen on the regular. And that, frankly, just makes it challenging because you're planning to go to a meeting and it gets rescheduled. You might not be able to go to the meeting the next time, right? Our capacity is pretty filled with what we have going on, so it's hard always to have that flexibility. And yeah, I mean, Tuesday was just a great example of that. It was said that, well, first of all, we were there at 6. The meeting's supposed to start at 6. It wasn't until after 6:30 that we got word from Special Advisor Keith Freeman saying that a quorum was not present, that the meeting was therefore canceled. Now, Trustee Chris Gonzalez was there. Trustee Jerry Jones was there. We saw him present. And Supervisor Henyard was assumedly there, and that makes 3 voting members of the board out of a board of 5.
One of the administrators came out and said lack of quorum, although
does that check out?
I believe everybody was here enough to have a meeting. There may have been a couple people missing, but I believe there was enough people to have a meeting, so we did have a quorum from what I saw.
It wasn't really clear exactly why that wasn't a quorum. So again, there's questions and complications there, and overall that's an inaccessibility. There wasn't a meeting when there was scheduled to be one.
You went there to get information, no information was available.
Exactly.
And that's completely different from, say, Lansing's village board. Our village board publishes a schedule at the beginning of the year of all the meetings that are going to happen throughout the year. And it's almost guaranteed that those meetings will happen when they say they're going to happen.
Yeah.
I can't think of a single time when a meeting has been canceled.
Especially not like a day before, hours before, or something like that.
So we're able to put that on our calendars and schedule around it. We can't do that with Thornton Township. It's just hard to get that into our schedule.
Right. Another example is just time and timing, and you kind of ran into that in your experience on Wednesday at the Township Talk.
Yes, that was a meeting that was published as being from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. I was there at 5 and waited for over an hour before Supervisor Henyard made her appearance.
I want you to do something for me. Turn to your neighbor, say, neighbor, I love you. And there's nothing you can do about it.
So the meeting got rolling around, I think it was 6:15 or so. And it was a long meeting. 2 hours, 2.5. That's a long time. and there was a lot of talking during that meeting. I was recording, I was shooting video. Just a lot of information, not information exactly, but a lot of words.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a long night. It was a 4-hour chunk of time that I was involved at that meeting. When I got home, I had to upload all that video. That was another couple of hours.
Yep.
And not just upload it, but label it and timestamp it so we know when these different things were said and who said them and who's in the videos. And that all takes time. That took time Wednesday night and Thursday morning. Now today you're going to spend time going through those video clips and organizing this video. And all told, we'll have at least 12 hours invested into these 2 meetings.
Right.
That really didn't result in any
substantial
solid information.
That's right.
And it's difficult to invest that kind of time on Thornton Township coverage when we're not sure of the result.
Right. Another example of inaccessibility is we have reached out for comment numerous times to Supervisor Henyard's administration for various stories. She's frequently on the record as saying the media doesn't care about the good things that she's doing. They don't reach out to her, the source, and we can't speak for other media, but we have consistently reached out to the Henyard administration for comments on stories that we know need to have both voices if possible, and we just have not received a response. It's also worth noting that in some of our more basic, just here's what happened at the township meeting stories, we do quote Supervisor Henyard quite a bit in those stories. So it's just hard to report on something if someone isn't going to comment on things. That's just another example of inaccessibility. That wraps up that inaccessibility bit, and just to do that, I want to provide a brief example of Tuesday night. Right, the meeting was canceled, and it was 6:30, and Keith Freeman came out and told everyone that the meeting was canceled due to the lack of a quorum. And there was a man there who I didn't recognize.
I just came to show see what the board meeting was like.
Well, now you know.
Now you know.
From your highway commissioner and the assessor, now you know.
For that person who just wanted to come and learn about the township, wanted to see how township business is done, it was inaccessible for him. And that doesn't mean he can't come next time and learn what he was trying to learn, but it just is largely inaccessible, and that makes it difficult for us to report on.
Maybe it sounds like a bunch of excuses, but this is the reality. It is difficult to keep reporting on Thornton Township. We have not given up.
No.
We will continue to show up and listen and watch when we can. And we will continue to hope that larger media do as well.
Yes.
We know it's important. We believe it's important for citizens of the township to be informed about decisions that are being made, about how tax money is being spent, about who's at the table and who isn't. And so, yeah, we want to provide that information.
Yeah.
We are not an advocacy group.
Right.
We are not taking sides. We are only providing information, and even that is difficult.
Right.
But we will continue to do all we can to keep Thornton Township informed and connected.
That's right. Our goal is to lay it all out there, lay the facts out there as best we can, so that you, the voter, you, the taxpayer, can decide what the best action is to take. And we will continue to do our best to report on township level news. And we really do thank you for reading those stories. We thank you for following the township at larger news outlets as well. We know it's important stuff. And we thank you for holding us accountable and asking why we're not recently been writing stories about the township. We appreciate that as well.
Right. After hours of being at meetings and sifting through claims that have been made, we do wonder if it's worth it sometimes, honestly.
Right.
So thank you for your encouragement. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your support, for your readership. And it wouldn't be worth it if you weren't out there reading the news we provide.
That's right. Thank you for watching today's video. We'll see you next week.